Texas. Hey everybody, welcome to day 3 of the 6.5 Summit for our executive Q&A session. Today, very excited to have Sheila Jordan, Chief Digital Transformation Officer at Honeywell. And Sheila will be bringing you in to introduce yourself really quickly, but just a quick wave to everybody out there saying thank you. Thanks for tuning in today. Our day actually started off with Honeywell and it's going to end with Honeywell. We had CEO and Chairman Darius Adamczyk kick off the day. And for our live Q&A session, Sheila, we're going to be talking to you about not just what our topic was today, 5G, IT, and Edge, but we're going to be actually talking to you as someone who's leading the digital transformation of your organization, kind of understanding how you are instilling processes, getting buy-in, and of course, we might, float some other things that were related to today's session, our conversation with Darius, et cetera, but we won't surprise you. Pat Moorhead, you're back with me, buddy. We've been doing all these recorded, so it's like we've been together, but we really haven't. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad we added the live element. Sheila, thank you so much for coming on. And, I always like to point on when we have people who actually, it's where the rubber meets the road, right? A lot of times we talk about enterprise IT in this kind of this fictional, ethereal way and, enterprise applications and digital transformation. But it's like, no, Sheila, you actually have to do this, don't you?
Yes, we do. And it is very real.
Yeah. So maybe Sheila, talk about, I know you've got this great title, but can you talk about what you do for the company, the expanse of it? Because not only is Honeywell an OT company, but an IT company, but you actually run all of digital transformation for the company. What is digital transformation at Honeywell?
Yes, it's a great question. First of all, my title is Chief Digital Technology Officer, so that's a little bit different, but the reality is it still is from a technology officer perspective. You are running and meshing together the technology, data, and processes to deliver the transformation agenda. So I joined Honeywell 15 months ago, and I actually joined because of Darius and the management team's agenda. I came in slightly naive, thinking I had worked at Symantec prior to this and then Cisco, so Silicon Valley software technology companies. And we did 9 large transformational things at Symantec, moving things to the cloud, subscription billing. I insourced the entire IT organization. And yet I get here and there's 42 active transformational programs. So think about this as every function, so legal, HR, finance, engineering, every strategic business unit has a digital agenda. So think about us digitizing contracts, 250,000 contracts, sellers, buyers, direct procurement contracts. Think about cash digitization. Think about how we're really digitizing the whole manufacturing and supply chain. Think about how we're doing this for marketing. And so on the marketing, and as we think about marketing, and of course, again, every strategic business unit and every function has some kind of a digital program going on. So my role specifically is to where my colleagues sit in the hub of this is, one, we own the technology, of course, but it also requires to make sure that we're stitching things together. So I can't emphasize enough how important data is. I actually liken data is the currency of the digital transformation, because when you think about a digital transformation, and I like to give this example, this consumer example, I can actually book my family of 4 on an international trip using my airplane app. I can do this in 7 minutes or less without pulling out a credit card, without pulling out a loyalty number, anything. I pick the people I want to travel with. I pick the location we're going to go. It processes my credit card. And while I'm standing in line at Starbucks, that international trip is booked. The only reason why it takes 7 minutes is because the airlines haven't quite figured out how to automate and digitize seat assignment, which I like the window seat versus the aisle seat, but neither here nor there. So the reality is that's digital. And when I explain that experience, that digital customer journey, it usually involves 5 to 6 different functions in the company to pull that off. Branding, marketing, packaging, pricing, finance, because I process my credit card. So the thing I love about digital, and the reason why I think IT leaders are so perfect to help lead these transformations, is because we systemically, and we, in part of our DNA is we think and see horizontally. We have to, because we can't fix one application somewhere and break something else. We can't fix one server and break something else. So innate into the actual discipline of IT is that it is connected. Everything's connected, right? And we have to make sure that we always see horizontally and systemically across the organization. Most companies are organized functionally. You're optimizing marketing or sales or engineering, that function. Digital changes all of that. Digital is a horizontal end-to-end experience that we want to have interactions with our customers, partners, and employees. So it really forces the business and IT together, looking at the end-to-end process and how we actually put that together to stitch those things together that create that magical customer experience or partner experience.
You use the word magical, and it's funny. You have a really interesting background, Sheila. And now that I've gotten the title incorrect, I want to make sure to get the rest of it right. So you said magic, and it made me think of, I've written 7 books and I've spoken on countless stages, and I use Disney endlessly as an example of digital transformation, the magic band, some of the innovation that's created to gain not just to add digital technologies, but to really transform the experience. It really was an experiential thing. And you've taken this, and I see you've had leadership at Cisco, you've had leadership roles at Symantec, you've been in tech, you've been in sort of consumer. You also sit on the board of Slack, which obviously is in the middle of being acquired by, so you're doing a lot of interesting things that are very inundated in the transformation. How is Honeywell so different? Because you went from consumer, super fun. I look at Disney and Starbucks as these really super fun, ephemeral transformation stories. Oh, we made this cool app. And then you went to work for these tech companies that are building it. And now you're at a company that's doing both. They're building it, but you, in terms of internally, not the kind of same cool factor. You're really transforming a conglomerate that has massive implications in every industry, but it's kind of seen as big, old industry. How different is this for you?
Well, it's very different, and it's actually one of the appealing aspects of why I joined. When I actually met with Darius and the management team, the fact that they had such a significant agenda around transformation, they want to transform. The fact that Honeywell is now becoming a software company. We are a software company with our Forge analytics, and where you bring in IT and OT together and really run different aspects of your environment is super exciting. So one of the appeals is that where Honeywell is in the leadership's agenda to where it wants to go. And so I'm not sure why, but I always like the challenge, right? And I like to apply my experience into knowing I've done something before, even if it was smaller scale and even if it was, on consumer, but the ability to pull all that together and help Honeywell really move the transformational agenda is super exciting to me. And I think that's exactly where we are. When you're thinking about digital, I use the word experience and magical and surprise and delight because that's kind of in my blood, having spent 15 years at Walt Disney World. And then you apply that to to knowing what's available and what's the technology that's available in Silicon Valley. And if I don't know, I have enough of a network to call people and find out what's coming next. And so bringing those together and really applying that to a company that wants to transform and wants to move and wants to introduce software and introduce new ways of connecting the IT and OT world, it's just such a super exciting opportunity.
Yeah, I love the breadth of experiences. I spent over 30 years in tech. I had different roles, from product management to product marketing to corporate strategy. But I love the fact that you've gotten all this experience in different types of companies. I can imagine how much fun it must be when you were working at Cisco and now you're in a vendor meeting. You must have a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I would want to be on the other side. But so, with that experience and the reality that all digital transformations don't just start and go serial and then nothing else changes as you're going along, the reality is you learn as you go along. Things change, situations change, the pace of business changes. So if a company's on a 3-year trajectory and things change, what's some advice that you can give to some folks where things have changed, where they might need to rethink their strategy, or I liken it to building the railroad as you're traveling on it?
Yeah, it's such a great question, Pat. And what I would say is, and I'll put the perspective into our experience with COVID. So I was 59 days with the company when COVID hit. And needless to say, when we made the decision that our employees had to go work from home, we weren't equipped. We're not in a tech company that was equipped to go work from home. So we looked at the network that needed to be re-architectured. We had to distribute 83,000 laptops around the globe. We had a lot of work to do, and the team stood up, and I called my Cisco and Dell friends, and they helped me, and we actually got everyone working from home in 8 days. Now, the next question you'd ask is, okay, everyone's trying to figure out exactly the impact of COVID onto their specific businesses, and do we adjust? Do we scale back? Do we slow things down? And again, I would say that I'm so proud of the decision the management team here is that we reset the transformation agenda a bit, but we kept full steam ahead, knowing that this would pass and knowing that we would come out of this. And because of that, and because of how we all learn to work with the technology, and whether we like Zoom or Teams or whichever technology you want, but we actually got really productive really fast. And so our transformation agenda continued. Now, back to your question, while there is an agenda and a strategy, that's important, but the reality is that everything today is got to be nimble, and you've got to find ways to adjust. So the good news is that technology is actually the easiest part of a transformational agenda. Once you pick the platform and once you make the technology decisions, that's relatively, it's not easy, but it's relatively easy as compared to everything else. Everything else is really making sure you think about the change management. You think about, we ask ourselves a question all the time here at Honeywell is, what would I do different? What would I do different to apply this new technology, this new capability? How do I run my business differently? How do I think about the metrics differently? How do I interact with the customer differently? So I think the change management is equally important. The other point I'd like to make is, I think really Honeywell is comprised of, hundreds and thousands of really, really, really smart people. Every company is. And I think when you have really smart people together, you might have a tendency to overcomplicate things or over-engineer things. When you look at trying to deliver a digital transformation, you want to make it as simple, as intuitive, and as smart as you possibly can. And again, when I look at what AI and machine learning really does in practice, it helps us with smart. It gets smarter and smarter and smarter over time. And machine learning will help the machine learn, the people learn, et cetera. So the biggest thing that people in the business and the IT people have to help do is simplify the process. You don't need to have 9 steps if you can do something in 1. If you can really simplify and make it so it's simple for your customers and partners and employees to work, to do business, to interact with Honeywell, that's a mission that we're on to really simplify the interactions.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. And by the way, I just keep thinking to myself this anecdote about the Disney era, the create magic and pick up the trash. This great story I heard from one of the, I was at a Disney Institute thing. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but it made me think about, and then I started thinking about, because it was Edge 5G day, about how I bet you they're using machine vision and all kinds of different things to kind of monitor the parks, and applying IoT now to, just the history of putting it all together, lots of time on stage. And now I'm thinking about the practicality of taking these processes and building them, because you kind of have 2 things going on. You've got the organization and the culture, and then you've got the actual technologies and the workflows. And so all the things that you just mentioned, the biggest thing in all the research I've done, and Pat, you and I've talked about this countless times, is you get the right tech, but you can't get the people to adopt it, put it into place, make it work, right? 50% of IT projects fail. I think CIO came out with that data point at one time. But does half the technology you buy not work? So what are some of the practical ways now across tech companies, across entertainment, consumer businesses, and now a big industrial company that you're seeing getting that cultural buy-in and getting those workflows to be implemented? And by the way, have it done, Sheila, quickly, because speed is a differentiator in this current state.
I totally agree with you. So first of all, I would say is you have to define a common language. And when you're trying to drive digital transformation across an organization, I mentioned before that there isn't a digital transformation strategy that any one function is responsible for. It isn't. I'm stitching together multiple functions. So you have to come up with a common language. The common language is often the customer. And when you can understand and walk in the shoes of the customer and understand and listen to some of their description of pain points and how they want to interact with you and what the best experience would be. I mean, I learned at Cisco, John Chambers taught us all, and it just continues everywhere else, is you have to be obsessed about the customer. Because ultimately they'll tell you what's wrong, they'll tell you what's broken, they'll tell you how to fix it, they'll give you input and feedback that you could spend months analyzing. But if you understand that, and you really want the teams to come together under that common language of how do I make the customer more efficient, more effective, a better experience, and you just get grounded on that common language. The other thing I'd say is I can't agree with you more on this whole time to market. Like the long gone is the days of a 3-year IT program. Long gone are the days of a 3-month IT program. I mean, what I've learned over the course of it with, again, the advancements of technology, the advancements of methodologies and agile and sprints. I mean, the fun story is I like to tell is my mother, who's 84 years old, she's always trying to figure out what I do for a living, and it's really hard to explain. So I give her all these examples. And so one day I was telling her about, agile and how you do things quick. And, sometimes I was explaining some things take a little longer. And so she goes, I've been really thinking about it, and I'm not sure I still understand, because I can update the operating system here by clicking that red little button on my iPhone. So she goes, so why is your job so hard? But anyway, the point of that story is that it's real that consumers are okay. Like when you said speed is a differentiator, I think perfection is the enemy of speed, right? If you wait for things to be perfect, you'll miss the market, you'll miss the opportunity to test, you'll miss the opportunity to get something out. And we've all learned as consumers that if that application doesn't have that right functionality right now, it's going to have it in the next release and the next release and the next release. So I would say that you have to, lack of a technical term, but you chunk things up so you can get out fast, test it, see, iterate. Agile development, sprints, scrums, whatever you want to call it, allows you to do all that stuff really fast in 6 weeks and 3-week efforts versus it being this monolithic thing that I'm going to try and get perfect. And, 2 years later, you deliver it and you've missed the whole opportunity. You just can't deliver IT and technology and business capabilities in the old way of doing things. It has to be more agile.
I love you had a couple real gems in there, and one of them was the customer is the common language. You need a common language to get everybody on the same page. I love that. And the other one, and by the way, I worked at multiple Fortune 500 companies, and we never had anybody like you in this role. And another one was perfection is the enemy of speed. And it's just like at some point you need to move forward, and whether we want to call it fast fail or iterate, that is the new way of doing things. And I think it took people a little bit along to get on that trail. But let's go from kind of hypothetical, strategic to real projects. So your folks provided us some of the examples of some things you're doing in digital transformation with Honeywell. And it seems to be a real reflection of innovations across your portfolio and vice versa. And I'm curious if there was, one example you can talk about, that's not super confidential of what is the best example.
Well, I think there's a lot, but I would say internally, one of the things I'm most excited about, and we just launched June 1st, is our first ever enterprise-wide smart virtual assistant. So we have bots all over the place, but the reality is again, I want to try and make the employee experience as productive as possible. So what the smart virtual assistant does, it's both AI and machine learning based. It literally will take all the questions you normally have as an employee. I want to change my home address. I want to change my password. I want to check out a PO. I want to look at procurement. I want to go look at my expense report. I mean, all the things that you do that require you to go into the finance applications, the HR applications, the procurement applications, and you're constantly going in and out of that. The smart virtual assistant, we happen to call it RED. So
cool.
It represents well. RED is gender neutral, and RED will answer your questions. And RED now appears in Teams, and you can actually go have a conversation with RED and get things done. And the cool thing about it is you can ask questions and find people on the directory and all those examples I mentioned. But the cool thing about it is it actually will work in workflow. So now it will say proactively, it's time to change your password. We know that's the number one reason why help desk gets called. It's time to change your password. So click here, and it goes through the workflow all systematically behind the scenes, and it will change your password without you going into those applications to do it. Now, the applications are still really important. They're sitting behind RED, but it's an interface. It's like Ask Google, but instead it's going to be Ask RED, and it's enterprise-based that will really help bring in all the things that an employee wants to do. Simultaneously, our comms team is super happy because we can actually push messages to the entire organization or to a certain location or to a certain region. So while you're in Teams, again, because I think what we've learned by us all working from home is that we do spend a lot of time in right now Teams or Zoom. And when you're in there, if you can do other things that make you more productive. So Red sits in teams, Red's there to talk to you, Red's there to interact with you, and it's going to make that experience even much more fulfilling. So we're super excited about our smart virtual assistant.
Yeah, and actually, Sheila, as I was reading some of the notes and some of the background that was shared ahead of the interview, one of the things I was reading about that was interesting, and I was going to ask you, you talked about the assistant. Another practical thing that actually fits today pretty well was, it sounds like you guys have a initiative called, in Smart Factory too. I'm not sure if you feel, you could talk a little bit about that, but, I was reading in the background about some of the investments you're making there. And some of the focus, and it said, 16 of your top manufacturing facilities, you're building common models, and I just figured for our audience today, since we did have a lot of people interested in industrial manufacturing, it sounds like you're also taking some of these processes and some of this automation and these skills that you're taking to the workforce and putting them out into the field.
Oh, yeah. So from an external Honeywell producing products and services, innovation here is like a flywheel. I mean, it really is. We're on a flywheel. Like I'm sure you've read about Forge. Forge is our analytics capability that really bring together IT and OT. So let's assume you're a head of real estate and you're running 1,000 locations across the globe. You'll see from the Forge analytics, how everything in that facility is running. What's the sensors? What's the HVAC, cooling? What's going on with servers, everything that's happening. And you can see all this through the analytics, and it even becomes predictive of when we think something could happen. So you're now, we all have our Nest and we all have our Ring technologies that run our homes. Well, now we've got the Forge analytics that can run 1,000 locations across the globe, all vis-a-vis the technology and the analytics. So we're super excited. And that's our big software play is Forge analytics. Back to your other question though, yes, we have smart factory initiatives. Remember, I mentioned earlier that every function in every strategic business unit has a digital agenda. On the manufacturing side, that is about smart factories. We're coming up with a design and the view of what that is. How connected is it really? And this is where I want to go back to the point I made around data is, I think if there's IT people in the audience, we've spent a long time getting our arms around the data of the organization. And now there's tools to help it be more predictive and analytical and all of that, and make us allowing us to give the business the data that they need to make near real-time decisions. And yet, as much advancements as we've made in data and AI, I think we're just scratching the surface. I think there's still going to be this plethora of data that happens when IT and OT converge. I mean, it really is happening faster than we think, where the CIO is going to be responsible for understanding the corporate IT as they've traditionally known, but now all the data that's coming from OT and all the information that's being ported, and how do you bring all that together to not only make the smart factory, but the smart worker in the factory? And are they working at optimal levels? And so you bring all that dynamics together to really help us run factories in a much smarter, more efficient way. So yes, there's lots of innovation happening within Honeywell.
Sheila, is there any thoughts you have on 5G? That I know you're cranking out strategies or aligning with businesses. Does 5G ever intersect those conversations?
I'm really super excited about 5G because I got to give it to the service providers. They've been talking about this for quite some time, and I actually believe this year it's come to reality. We're actually deploying 5G in our corporate headquarters, which we're moving in the end of August, September. We're going to have that on several floors to begin with, and then open that up to other floors across. And if you believe in the promise, the speed, the experience that will happen with 5G, you think about the plethora of information and content and videos and all the things that all do on the phone. That's going to happen in nanoseconds. So the promise of 5G is quite exciting, and I really believe that it's here. And we're deploying in our corporate headquarters in August and September. Simultaneously, though, I think it has a big impact into all of our products and services. We're looking at where 5G makes sense in our products and services. I know our CTO, Suresh, is really evaluating what play, especially products and services on the edge, and how that's going to impact the speed of delivery and the transport of data. That's going to be a major consideration in all of our products and services. So yes, I think it's very much, I think we've crossed the hump and it's no longer a promise, it's a reality, and we're all working through exactly the use cases of where it plays.
Quick question. I know people are dying to ask, is it private 5G you're putting in or through a carrier?
It's through a carrier.
Okay, thanks.
Well, Sheila, I want to thank you so much. We understand how busy all the executives are that have joined us for these live sessions. And we've hit you with a lot of questions. We've gone as broad and as narrow specific. And I hope everybody out there really enjoyed it. Sheila, we'll have to have you back. We'll have to do this again. I'm looking forward to sort of tracking all of the work that you're doing and how much this is able to impact the really aggressive journey that Darius and the other executives, including yourself, have shared with us over the past year or so that we've been engaged in working with Honeywell.
Excellent. Well, thank you for inviting me. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody out there, thanks for tuning into day 3's live session. Again, Sheila Jordan, Chief Digital Technologies Officer at Honeywell. It was a great day, a lot of terrific sessions. Remember, all these sessions are available on demand. So click them, share them, subscribe, sign up, register, email it to your friends, all that good stuff. 6.5 Summit, we couldn't do it without you, our audience, and you, our vendor partners. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again tomorrow for our Semiconductor and Devices Day. And what a big day it is, kicking off AMD CEO and President Lisa Su. We'll see you tomorrow.